What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down a wide receiver football IQ quiz. So if you're not familiar with our quiz style videos, what I'm going to do is show a pre-snap look, ask you guys how you would run a specific route against that pre-snap look, give you a chance to answer, and then explain the answer itself. So I hope this video helps you guys out. Hope it could teach you a few new things, but also, fellas, if you are a wide receiver and you guys would like a daily route running training schedule to follow with all of the on-field drills you should be doing this year, check out that very first link in the description below for our 28-day on-field wide receiver workout plan. It's a full 4-week schedule where we map out the exact sets, reps, and drills to do with examples of each one. So check out that very first link below if you're interested in that, fellas. Let's get started. So this first pre-snap look we're going to be talking about here. How would you guys run a fade route versus this type of coverage from the DB? So obviously wide receivers on the bottom of the numbers here, you can see ball is to the inside. How would you guys run a fade route versus this type of coverage? You guys can go ahead and pause the video, think about how you would do it, maybe write down your answer, whatever it is, and then you can go ahead and play the video, and that's what I'm going to explain it. So go ahead and pause the video. All right, let's break this thing down. So obviously this type of coverage is what? It is zone coverage, right? So if you have to run a fade route against zone coverage, there are a couple different things that you need to do. So this DB looks like he's a little bit shaded to the outside, eyes to the inside, either looking at the number 2 receiver or looking at the quarterback. So he's probably in a coverage called I would assume this is probably like cover 3 or cover 4. He's got help to the inside. That's why he's playing outside shade. I don't think this is cover 2 where he's going to be sitting in the flats because he would be a little bit closer and probably trying to get hands on this wide receiver. So the mistake that a lot of wide receivers will make when they run this fade route is they will think that they need to run just directly to the blind spot. Now, if that's what you said, that would be incorrect. If you guys said that you would want to close the space and give a fake to the inside called a vertical set, which is essentially like a jab or a hard cut to sell the post, then slip back to the outside, that would be correct. So let's watch how this wide receiver plays this thing. He closes the space, he attacks his DB, gives a hard move inside, and sets him up for space to the outside. Now, this is one of those things where the route can kind of vary, right? Because normally what I teach you guys, especially if you're familiar with this channel, is, if he's outside leverage, you want to take an inside release. Now, sometimes on a fade route, especially against zone, that's not necessarily the best course of action. It can be if the DB is like overly 8 yards wide. You know, I've seen that look from a lot of high school or youth playbooks where the DB's so far outside leverage that you will never be able to get outside of him. So that's when you would want to maybe take an inside release. But anytime that it is zone, whether he's head up, whether he's inside shade, or whether he's slightly shaded to the outside, main thing is I want to close the space first. Now, I got to give my quarterback, especially when it's a fade route, space to be able to actually fade me open. That's why I said you don't want to run directly to the blind spot. Because anytime that a wide receiver usually sees this zone type coverage, DB's looking to the inside, he sees that this DB has a blind spot. And they think on every single route, let's go attack the blind spot. Let's run to the blind spot because he won't be able to see me. But you got to understand that when he's shaded to the outside, the blind spot is his leverage. So if you just take off and run there, he's just going to keep his leverage there and squeeze you to that sideline. You're not going to have any room for that quarterback to fade us. So that is why we need to close space and give a fake inside to give myself space to the outside. So he runs off here. He gives this move called a vertical set. That jab to the inside, that's what we call a vertical set. All we're trying to do is get this DB to crash on the slant, crash on the post, whatever it might be. So when I slip to the outside, at least I got some space to operate. Even if he recovers and he's right on my hip, we got him beat here by a couple steps, but even if he's playing me well, at least I have space now for my quarterback, like we said before. So fade route versus this zone type coverage, fellas, just make sure we close the distance and give a hard fake to the inside. If this DB's further away, you would just close the distance more and it would be still the same concept. If he's up or if he's in press bail, it's all the same. Let's play this again full speed one more time. Great job by this wide receiver giving that vertical set, setting that quarterback up with some space to fade him to the outside and winning on that ball. All right, so next example here, we're going to be looking at this route from Terry McLaurin. So pre-snap look, we have outside shade press coverage. This wide receiver is lined up probably at the middle of the numbers. How would you guys run a 10 to 12 yard out route versus this coverage? So 10 to 12 yard out route versus outside shade press from the middle of the numbers. You guys can go ahead and pause the video and think about how you'd run the route. So pause the video. Okay, let's break this thing down. So number one thing, I'm hoping a lot of you got this correct, especially if you've been keeping up with the videos, that you would take an inside release on this and you would work to stack or you would work to throw him by. I tried to throw you guys off a little bit with the middle of the numbers alignment part of the question, but But honestly, it doesn't depend on where you're lined up on the field. It depends on this DB's alignment, right? So if he's lined up shaded to the outside, we know that he's trying to take away what? He's trying to take away the outside. He's trying to take away that outside release. Funnel everything to the inside, because just like in the first example on that fade route, he was in zone, but he was shaded to the outside. So what did he probably have inside? He probably had help, right? So same thing when he's pressed. Just because he's in a different form of coverage, the leverage responsibility does not change. So he's outside shade pressed. That means he's got help to the inside. But he's not going to give up the outside release. So on an out route, what a lot of guys will try to do is they try to fake to the inside shoulder, then take the outside release. Now, the problem with that is that DB's taught never to give up the outside release. So you're going to end up just like that fade route when you run to the blind spot. You're going to get squeezed to that sideline. And if you have to run an out route requires space. An out route requires room for the quarterback to throw you open, if you will. So if we just run and we cut down that space, you're not going to be getting the ball. Okay, so we would want to make sure that we attack his outside leverage of the move, take the inside release. My goal is to either stack him and get him trailing my back hip, or if he's right hip to hip with me, I throw by and slip under. Okay, so now this question kind of has a two-part question. It's kind of a two-part question. This wide receiver doesn't run this route correctly. So we're going to show the route, it gets locked up, and I'm going to ask you guys, what do you think happened or what do you think went wrong on this route that this wide receiver could improve on? So let's play at full speed. So what do you guys think he could have done better on this route to get some more separation and not allow that DB to make a play? So let's try it again. Let's play it again one more time. What do you guys think on this play he could have done better, top of the route, on the stem, off the line, whatever, to make this route work? So you guys can go ahead and pause the video and think about your answer. So pause the video. Okay, so now, main thing. Some of you might have thought that, okay, at the top of the break, he did the right thing off the line, tacked his leverage, took the inside release quick, DB's right on his hip, so what do we have to do? We have to throw by. Now, some of you might think that, oh, well, this DB, this is holding, he's grabbing him right here. I'm going to tell you this right now. If it's not an obvious jersey grab and you were trying to throw by a DB, slip under a DB, whatever it is, and it's not obvious where he's like fully extended grabbing your jersey, we're probably not going to get a holding call. Probably won't, especially if you're a high school or a youth guy. So we can't use that as an excuse. How you can draw a bigger holding call, how you can get more separation and actually be able to slip under. If you guys said to have a more violent hip drop at the top of the break, you would be 100% correct because he did everything right. Because again, this brings me back to the same thing that I've been harping on you guys about. It's not about necessarily knowing the technique. It's not about necessarily just knowing how to run your routes. You have to have a combination of both. I have to know how to run my routes, and I also have to know the stuff at the top of the route that I can do to get me open, to get me separation, and eliminate wasted motion. Now, again, this is Terry McLaurin, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Don't really think he cares about my opinion in terms when it comes to his route running unless he's going to train with me, right? But I say this because a lot of younger wide receivers make the same mistakes. And I'm trying to show you guys that even guys at the top of the level, these are why certain things don't work. And it's all football, fellas, from youth all the way up to the NFL. It's all football. Obviously, it's at a higher speed. Obviously, these guys are freaks of nature, but the same principles apply. So when he gets to the top of the break here, again, watch his hip drop. You see how he's selling fade, right? He's doing his job. He's getting that DB to open up his hips and run. He's pushing vertical. He's doing all the things he needs to do. Make the DB think it's a fade. But when we're at the top of the route and I'm doing that and my hip drop is kind of like this slow sink, when you have speed going into the break and you have a slow drop of your hips, what do you think that's going to cause you to do? It's going to cause you to drift a little bit. You're going to, instead of breaking down right there at the break point and being able to drop your hips and slip under him, or get him to shoot by and have him grab your jersey and draw a holding call, when you drift upfield because your hips are slowly breaking down and you drift up maybe a couple extra yards, that just gives that DB extra time to react. That's why it's so important we have a violent hip drop. That's why it's so important we're able to change direction with no wasted motion, because all of those things will help me get more separation in and out of breaks faster and just be a better overall wide receiver. But those details matter. So if that's what you guys said, you would be 100% correct. Let's play this thing again, full speed. Right idea for McLaurin, right way to run the route. Just at the top of that break, we need that violent change of direction so the DB doesn't have time to react. Okay, so next look I want to talk about here is how would you guys run a 6 to 5 yard hitch route versus this type of coverage from the DB? So I want you to pay attention to a couple things. I want you, number one, let's try to think about what the coverage is and how you would run that hitch route versus this coverage. So you guys go ahead and pause the video. Think about how you would run a 6 yard hitch versus this type of coverage. So go ahead and pause the video. All right, let's break this thing down. So obviously DB's eyes are to the inside. So that's number one. Because as a wide receiver, the reason why I make these videos is so you guys know how to think, right? Because a lot of times wide receivers, I get a lot of flack sometimes because people will say, oh, well, this is too much to think about. You're overthinking it. Like, you're just going to confuse people. Like, guys can't worry about that much stuff. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying you got to think about all of this at one specific time. It's got to be a reflex. If you ever want to be a good route runner, good receiver, just like a quarterback doesn't come up to the line of scrimmage and think about, how complex a throwing motion is? Like, you got to worry about your stride. You got to worry about your hips. You got to worry about your arm path, your release point, your front shoulder. You really think a quarterback comes up to the line of scrimmage, is worried about the coverage of the defense and his throwing mechanics? No, he's repped it out a million times so he doesn't have to think about it. That's what I'm trying to get you guys to do. I'm trying to have you rep out these different pre-snap reads, these different pre-snap looks a million times in your head. So when you go into a game, it is a reflex. We do not have to think about it. We can play fast. And I've already done the legwork in the offseason to get better. That's why I say all this stuff. So when we got a DB, obviously, eyes are to the inside. It looks like it's zone coverage. So he looks like he's almost in press, too, because he's close up. He's not 5 yards away. He's not 8 yards away. So it's probably a situation where he's going to press bail. Acting like he's going to maybe press, eyes get to the inside, and he's going to turn out of there. So that's what I would say it is. Now, if you have to run a hitch route, and he turns his body to the inside, what does he have back here? We talked about that in the very first example. It's called a blind spot, right? So if I'm running a hitch route, do you think I want to attack his inside shoulder? I want to work to the blind spot, try to get him out of there to think fade, and then snap it off. Probably attack the blind spot, right? So if that's what you guys said, that would be correct. We want to angle my stem to the outside. So let's watch what Marvin Jones does here. He attacks the blind spot, snaps it off, gets the DB thinking fade, and that quarterback can throw us open to the outside. Fellas, that is all it takes sometimes. It's not about being complex. Again, we have to make our routes look like a fade every single time. So if you have an inside breaking route, like I would consider a hitch inside breaking because you're turning to the inside. But let's say you have a 5-yard hitch or a 6-yard hitch. Let's say you're running a dig. Say you're running a post. Say you're running a 12 back to 10-yard curl. You want to attack that blind spot because that is the DB's leverage. Remember, we talked about that. If I'm running a fade route, I would consider that outside breaking. If I'm running a fade route, let's attack that inside shoulder and hip, give him a fake, and then slip to the outside to give myself more space. Just like on an out route, I would attack inside shoulder and hip, get him to flip, and slip under him to give me more space. But now if I'm running an inside route like a hitch, a in, a post, let's try to widen him. Because remember, when he's in zone, he probably has help to the outside. So let's go attack that blind spot. Let's attack that blind spot with good pad level, good speed, good stride, all of those things that make this DB think fade because that's what's going to get him to bail out of there. Because in zone, what does he not want to give up? He doesn't want to give up the deep pass. He doesn't want to give up that deep fade ball. So that's what we have to make it look like. From a 3-step slant to a 6-yard hitch to a 15-yard comeback, we always have to be concerned with selling my routes. Let's play this thing again one more time for Marvin Jones. It's a great job attacking that blind spot and showcasing how to run that hitch route versus press bail coverage. All right, fellas, really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. Always appreciate the feedback. It's always great to hear from you guys. And again, fellas, if you would like a 4-week wide receiver on-field workout schedule, all the wide receiver drills you should be doing with sets, reps, all mapped out for you, check out that very first link in the description below. I'll see you guys next time.